And just like always, we'll just give a couple minutes here.
Are we good? Position-wise?
I will let you know as soon as I check all our streams here.
I can't. See.
We are good on Twitter. I'm just checking the others.
Picture. And frames. Okay, emoji.
Yes, I'm just checking Instagram.
For anyone that has already joined live on Twitter or some of the other social platforms, thank you for joining us. We are just making sure that we have officially connected live with all of our social platforms and minute or two.
Just for Instagram, do you guys mind getting a little bit closer?
Scooch in. Are we good here?
Yeah, sorry, there's just a little lag on the Instagram, so it just takes me a second. Yeah, that's better.
Okay, thanks.
We should be good to go.
Thank you to everyone joining us today. This is another live Talk It Out session. This month, our focus is on emotional shock. And I am Megs Reynolds, the Executive Director of the Doomer Agriculture Foundation. Joining me today is Wendy Bennett from AgSafe BC. Wendy, thank you for being with me. This is also the first time we have done one of these lives in person and not just on computer screen. So pretty cool. It is pretty cool. For those of you not on Instagram, we're pretty close right now.
Might be a little awkward, but it's all good.
But we fit all of the live on all the platforms, so that's good. I'm gonna hand things over to Wendy to further kind of introduce AgSafe BC and just kind of set the stage for how we're going to talk about emotional shock today, especially with kind of what's gone on in BC in the last 4 years.
Which is a lot. So thanks for having me today. It's pretty cool to be here, and it's Megs and I, well, Megs primarily, helped deal or address a live audience today with BC, particularly the poultry industry, who's had to deal with a lot in the last few years. So AgSafe Agriculture Association, or AgSafe BC as we're more casually known, is a health and safety association for BC agriculture. And we provide health and safety support, including mental health, which is becoming more and more crucial these days, to all producers throughout the province of BC.
And just to kind of segue from that, BC, for those of you who are not in BC, not farming in BC, joining us from other areas of Canada, BC in the last 4 years, 3 years has had the heat dome, avian influenza,
Twice.
Yeah, twice. The really devastating floods that happened a year and a half ago now in the Sumas Valley region. And then, of course, this past year, they were, I would say, out of Canada, just hit provinces again for avian influenza. So when you look at different events that could happen in agriculture that could create emotional shock, there has been no shortage of those events in BC.
Yeah, and a lot of the farmers were devastated multiple times by each of those events on different days. So within the Sumas Prairie, there were farmers who were recovering from avian influenza and had lost their entire flocks, who then repopulated and lost their entire flocks because of the floods, and probably are amongst the group that has recently lost them again because of avian influenza and the heat dome on top of all that. And then this is all during a pandemic. So yeah, BC producers have been through a lot.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, one of the reasons that it was really important for Do More to focus on emotional shock as part of our Talk It Out series and not just talk about, you know, the more kind of traditional things we think about when we think about mental health or illness, like anxiety and depression, was that emotional shock is something that we will all experience. We may not all experience a mental illness in our lifetimes. We most likely will have someone in our life that has experienced or is experiencing a mental illness, but we will all experience emotional shocks and challenges in our day-to-day. That could be changing a career. For those of, you know, not in industry, it could be losing a job, it could be losing a loved one, it could be a family dynamic changing. In agriculture, there are so many pieces that are outside of our control, but yet they have so much influence on our ability to be successful. And those pieces can be traumatic, they can be emotional shocks, and they can have a really big impact on just our overall day-to-day mental wellness. We are talking about pretty big events. And one of the things that I have personally seen in agriculture way too often, and I get that we need to be optimists here, but that conversation of there's always next year, and how it is important, I think, in that moment where you just need to put your head down. And if you've just, you know, your barn has just been, you found out that you have avian influenza in your barn, then of course you need to prioritize that you need to get through the next month, 2 months, whatever that looks like for dealing with that situation, and all the protocols and what have you that come through that. Or the flooding last or a year and a half ago, you know, you're in survival mode, you're in cleanup mode, you're in all of those pieces, especially if you have animals. But what happens after that? Do we create space to kind of hit pause when we're through that and look at, okay, what am I feeling? How did this affect me? Is there grief? What do I need to work through to take care of myself and recharge myself and take care of my mental wellness? Or are we just like, there's always next year, put your head down, keep going, don't deal with anything? I want you to talk a little bit about what happened after the flooding, because I think that was an incredible moment of creating space to come together to have conversations and to support each other.
And after the flooding, while it was all still happening, while the floods were occurring, the biggest, I think one of the biggest turning points was that nobody was in it alone anymore. And it didn't matter if you were part of agriculture or you were just part of the greater community that was there. If you were a dairy producer, if you it didn't matter. And if somebody needed help with their particular environment to try to move animals to higher ground, to try to not have to lose entire flocks, whatever it was, people came together there were no boundaries. Mm-hmm. They were just there to try and provide assistance and to provide support. When the water receded, and then it was kind of, you know, the emotional shock, which is a huge topic, of course, when it kind of set in what had happened, and people started to look around and see how it had impacted their particular locations. Again, the boundaries were non-existent, and people from various walks of life and farmers and non-farmers alike were there to support each other, to try to assess the damage, cover what could be covered, again, try and save animals that had managed to survive the flooding, and just be together to try to support each other. It was amazing. It was sad and it was devastating, but to see the way the community pulled together was absolutely amazing.
And can you expand a little on, you know, what started as kind of that casual conversation in those community group settings where people were coming together for a meal, and maybe there was work gloves and stuff there that they could grab, to what you guys are doing?
So, well, interesting. So there were a couple of farm wives, that's how they termed themselves, who decided that they needed to be able to do something. They felt helpless, but they knew they could do something. So they banded together and went out and sought donations. And the community came together, the retail community, the industrial community came together and handing donations quite generously. And so they needed a way to distribute these. So they decided to set up one of the barns. So Holly in particular took over her husband's barn and said, here, all this stuff, the shed actually, so all the equipment had to be moved out and be somewhere else, which was winter time, so that's not the best. But anyways, Tony was all about it, all for it. And they set up all of the donations that had come in, and then between them and a lot of the local businesses, they sent out flyers, they posted things everywhere. And there was an arrangement for people to come and collect whatever they needed at the time. There was a tremendous group that were involved, and there were donations and sponsorships, and we handed out Christmas presents for the kids, and there was food, coveralls, boots, you name it, whatever people needed. And when that was all said and done, the next day they had a Christmas parade that ended up at one of the local dairy farms that's also has a retail counter, and ice cream, had a local band playing, and pizza that, and it was just a really great opportunity to come together and celebrate that they had got through this. They still had a lot of work to do, and there was still a lot of devastation to be assessed, accounted for. They were able to come together and try and just be together as a means of. So from that location, and then 3 other locations set up to be the hub, because the donations continued to come in, and they needed places where people could come and access, where they could come and donate, but also where people could access the items and the things that they might need. And a lot of times people just come and sit and have a cup. It was just an opportunity to chat, to address the anguish that they were dealing with, stresses that. So AgSafe was contacted by a local counselor, really wanted to help, and she did equine therapy. And so we suggested that she attend one of these hubs and just help out a little bit. And so she went there and started just helping with unloading trucks of donations and helping load trucks, and then sitting around and having coffee. And people learned quickly she was a counselor and would say, hey, got a sec? She would have little brief casual conversations, and then the conversations got a little bit. So she was able to find some quiet space. And then it got to the point where she was booking herself at the hub between 2 and 3 days a week for an hour at a time. She was there for 10 hours a day, talking to people. She had gained their trust, and more people about it. And so we brought on more counselors. And now I'm really pleased to say that we're able to offer counseling to anybody in agriculture in the province of BC, whether you live in it, work in it, your parents are in it, it doesn't matter. That is free of charge. AgSafe acts as the insurer through fabulous grant that
Yeah, that is so incredible. And just highlights how sometimes it takes time to build that trust or to make someone comfortable because of the stigma surrounding mental health and people feeling like they're maybe not safe to have conversations, or that they feel less than a farmer, less than a person because they need to reach out for help, when in all reality it takes a lot of courage to realize that you're struggling and benefit from reaching out for mental health support professionally, but just how then that grows. And it is incredible to have a source that is free, because again, it is, at Doomware, we always say it's better to talk to someone than nobody, but there are so many times when being able to connect to a mental health professional, when you have had an emotional shock, going through challenges, is so much more beneficial. We're all at different places in our mental health journeys, and being able to connect to someone that is that professional, can help with tools, can be that safe place to talk through. It's not your family, it's not your friends. Maybe there's more free there to share is so important. But then also removing that barrier of cost is. We all know, those in agriculture and those farming, how hard it can be to get extra money to do stuff like this, and usually there isn't that either. So incredible what you guys are doing. I just want to stress the importance too and of being able to have that conversation. And if you're not at a place where you're ready to maybe make that call and reach out to that mental health professional, there are other supports out there. So last week, Do More Ag recently launched Ag Talk, which is a national peer-to-peer support platform for anyone who, as Minnie says, works, plays, connected to Canadian agriculture, 16 years and older. It is fully anonymous, so you can join, you create a username, could be like peanut butter pie, nobody knows it's you. And it's also monitored by clinicians. So not only can you go there and connect with others that understand what you're going through and have shared experience, but that there are mental health professionals there to help guide you along your journey, help you progress. Maybe you're in a great place and you can just go sign up and help be a support person, help someone to think about what you talked about at the hubs. It's still that hub. You're just not physically being there in person. You're online connecting, which we already do. Social media. Farmers are one of the biggest user groups of Twitter. But just the importance of reaching out and having those conversations. And then I think above and beyond that, it's like, what can you do to better understand what you need and how you need to take care of yourself and recharge yourself or those around you? And then also try to take away some of those. So I'm going to hand it back to Wendy because that's a big part of like what Ag Safe C does, what other Ag Safe do provincially across Canada, is in understanding what your risks could be, how to plan for disasters, which we're seeing often, and how being able to proactively do some of those pieces can really benefit just for mental wellness because you are taking at least some control of what could otherwise.
Trying to be prepared for what could happen. And a lot of what we are doing now is preparing because, of course, wildfires are happening, which is unprecedented. This number of wildfires to be this time, particularly at this time of it's not uncommon to see lots of wildfires, but typically it's not till the end of July or August. And then Ontario, I know it's having really rough. I just read earlier, air quality in Toronto, they're recommending stay inside. And so, well, wildfires, that is something beyond our control. It's sad how some of them are created, but certainly we don't. And I know somewhere said that hundreds of lightning strikes in one. So how do you prepare for that? And some of the things with what my team does, and I know with other organizations like us across the country, is talk about not having fuel, so fuel for fire. So if you have a huge wood pile stock, don't put it right next to your house, right? Or don't put it next to your barn. So not somewhere that's going to allow a structure to catch fire. So we do a lot of training to that. But another piece that we do is trying to encourage farmers to think all of the potential risks around them. So you have a train track that runs near your property. Well, what could run across that? What if there was a derailment? What would you do and how would that impact you? What if there was another flood? Like, what would you do? And then really encouraging people to think outside the box and just have some kind of plan that, because you know what? Meteor did fall from the sky and come to somebody's roof and land in the bed. Like, it did happen. The likelihood of that happening again, I hope, is like zero, but it did happen. So trying to just think outside the box. And then what we've put together is just a documented paper plan that just says, in the event of, here's the different things that consider things that we need to know. There's a form that filled out through BC Cattlemen started it. Government is now taking on, I'm not sure on that. We have that, and you put in things like, in the event that I have to evacuate, here's my contact. Here's where my chemicals are stored. Here's where there's access to water. And you put it in a tube and hang it on your plate. And then it has a retro sticker on it so that when emergency services are able to arrive at your location, they know where to find things. They know how to get up. They know, do you have animals? Where are they? Where were they moved to? Anything and everything that's relevant. And that's just having that plan in place knowing that if something horrific and unplanned and happens, at least you have a plan.
Yeah.
And that just helps people so much better.
Mm.
So why do you practice fire drills in school?
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, it's getting adults to do that now. More difficult, but it's along the same lines.
Mm-hmm. And I think that we can take that concept and that idea and that, plan to be prepared into other areas of our life as well. So that it's not just it's not just, what do we do in case of emergency with fire or flood or what have you. It could be what can I do in my day-to-day that best sets me up for any type of emotional shock that I may or may not experience. So, I think of just life changes or even what we can, flashing back to farming with 2 kids under 2 and having them in the combine with me and like what I could have done at that time to better take care of my mental wellness and recharge my battery, which I wasn't doing at the time because I wasn't aware of all of these pieces, but that would have put me that prep work and that being prepared and saying, okay, I can do this for self-maintenance and I can say I need to wake up before the house and have 10 minutes coffee before things get busy, or that I'm getting a walk in or what have you. But that if I would have been looking at those pieces the same way that we look at emergency preparedness plans, I would have been in a much better place just to ride some of those. Because emotional shock does not need to be a massive flood. It does not need to be a loss in the family. It could be one thing that to an outsider looks like a very small thing, but when you have so many other things already on your plate, when you're living with that chronic stress load, sometimes it is just that one little thing that doesn't seem like a big thing, but it's that tipping point of someone going from seemingly okay, probably not okay with that chronic stress level, but to being in a place where suddenly it's a high risk situation and it could be a dangerous place for that individual to be in.
And knowing, personal example, I yesterday had something that I was really struggling to deal with and I needed to reach out to somebody. And I thought, first thing I thought of was that I could reach out to a counselor, but it was 10 o'clock at night. And so not having something prepared and in place, I just didn't sleep instead, and that kind of thing. So ensuring that everybody has something in place where I know I can call this person to have a non-judgmental, supportive conversation that could mean, in this case, deal with the situation that I was in. And now Megs has offered to be my person. So, but not having that in place is the contradictory to what I try to other to do. So glad to have that today.
I think we need to think of it as, no different than anytime you're filling out, you go to the dentist, you go to the doctor, you go to the optometrist, and it's like, who is your emergency contact? I think we need to start thinking about who our support people are in the sense of our mental wellness and just people safe places where we can have conversations the same way where it's like, okay, yeah, who does the person call, the doctor, the whoever, when everything hits the fan? Who do we call?
$1,000,000 question.
Yeah.
And I know who I'd call at 3 in the morning if somebody was breaking into my house without me, but I'm not calling that person when I'm stressed and going, I don't know how to deal with this.
Yeah.
So having that a bit is pretty crucial.
Yeah. Well, I think then, we've talked about this before too, but practicing.
Yes.
So it's one thing to, have the plan, or to have that person. Maybe we've figured it out. We've walked down that path. We have that person, but it's another thing to be practicing. There's a reason that, again, kids do fire drills in school multiple times a year, or adults in offices, or we do CPR every couple of years, or first aid, to know that when that happens, or when we're in that place where we do need support, that it is instinctual that we're able to connect to it and feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty crucial. And it's using children in fire drills is one thing, but you ever need to run a fire drill in a business place, just bring in the child.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like they do it, whereas a lot of adults will say, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing, right? Do you have a mental health support, somebody that you can turn to at a moment's notice And the answer is, yeah, I'm good. I don't have to worry about that. Right. So sadly, that's not always the case.
Well, and I think too, those people can play an important role of kind of being that constant that promotes connecting to professional resources. If that's, I mean, I think they're good for anyone at any time, but that's me. Because I mean, I think back to some of the challenging times in my life where I moved off farm and, going through life changes and family changes and all of these different identity changes and all of these different dynamics where I should have immediately connected to a mental health professional and to a counselor. And instead I was like, nope, I got this. I don't need help. But having those people in my life that were like, Megs, you could really benefit from this, and being that support person to listen, because there was a lot of times where I just needed to talk, but to also in that moment say like, I'm here for you and we can keep having these conversations, or I can keep listening, but I really think this, and pushing and supporting that person to connect to more of that professional help is needed, because when you're going through something, even if you are someone that's pro mental health and an advocate for all of these pieces, because of the stigma surrounding mental health, it can be really hard that you're actually in that place to say, okay, no, this is what I need, and connect the dots and make that call.
And I think to that point, as a mom, we are in, and other parents, and I'm not segregating, but my familiarity obviously is as a mom. My job is to protect my children and to fix it. And so I could help them and fix stuff for them. So when it was me, I fix things. So I'm not going to reach out to somebody else to try and help me fix me, because my job is to fix things and make it better and take care of it. And so, the whole self-care or whatever seemed very often to just be indulgent. And I don't have time to do that because children, and
that's like a warrior badge. I'm so busy. I'm doing this. I don't have time.
I don't have time to take.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sad but true.
I worked so many hours yesterday, especially farming. I mean, I look back to when I was farming, and I mean, you see it online in the way people communicate and they talk about stuff. And yeah, it is this badge of, I possibly couldn't work that into my schedule because I need to do all these things. It's like, well, the reality is, yes, you do need to do those things. And especially with farming, there's a never ending list. That list is never going to end. But you can't continue to move down the path of doing all the things you're trying to do and checking things off that list if at some point you're not taking.
It's only when I started to work with people in agriculture that I met farmer after farmer after farmer who went out with a to-do list in the morning, and when they came in at the end of the day, the to-do list was longer. Like, how is that even possible? But that's just the way it was. But if your equipment breaks down, you need to take the time to stop and fix it, and then you're cursing yourself because you didn't do the maintenance.
Yeah.
So if you look at yourself as the equipment, so to speak, why wouldn't you do the maintenance on that as well to ensure that you don't break down?
Yeah.
And end up being out of commission for an extended time.
Yeah, I think if there's anything to take away from our live session today and to take away from emotional shock for me, and I'm going to toss to you in a second, but for me, it's that we don't go through life without emotional shock, and that there are going to be things that affect us certain ways that maybe affect someone differently, and that's okay. But it's important to be able to create space and grace and validate what we're feeling, how we're thinking, how we're going through things, and to give ourselves time to process. And then, especially in the role of, business leader, community leader, spouse, parent, what have you, and this can be hard, but finding a way to put your own oxygen mask on first. So take care of yourself first, recharge your battery, refill your cup, knowing that without doing that, you can't, or you'll have to support others that are relying on you.
It's a hard lesson.
Yes.
It's a hard lesson.
Yeah.
One that many, many still need to learn. But yes, the airline analogy, it's important, and it's so crucial. It is so crucial. And watching the emotional shock, the very real emotional shock when the Sumas Prairie flooded, and how each individual managed, how they coped in their own ways, and the variety with how people responded, fight, flight, and there was all of that. All of that was apparent. But the individuals that were able to just step up and say, "It's okay, I got you," and take people under their wing and help them to address, to get past the freeze part, and then become the advocates to help just guide their recovery, to guide their process. And the community, it's awful because a tragedy happened, and it was a very big tragedy, and a lot of people suffered still. But the community is stronger than it's ever been in that region. They're all terrified for the next heat dome. Anytime the word atmosphere, or the phrase atmosphere comes up, the feel the tension. And they're just waiting for the next shoe to drop. But it's you know, watching people and how they address stuff and being able to embrace each other has just been tremendous. And I just hope that can continue.
And you never know what someone else is dealing with. And we all have different size plates, and the size of our plate and what we can handle and what we can take on in any given day is going to change depending on what we're going, especially if there's some type of emotional shock going on live. So yeah, I think takeaways: be kind, support each other, ask questions, ask how someone's, you know, go past the, you know, how are you doing? Ask if they're okay, how they're feeling. Try to connect with each other on a deeper level, but check in on your people, especially the ones that you think are okay, because we get very, very good at hiding how we're doing in something. If you're looking for more information on EggSafe BC, head over to
eggsafebc.ca. There's a whole section devoted to mental wellness in agriculture, and some fabulous work that's been done, and I would encourage everyone to check it.
And anyone in BC looking to connect in agriculture to the free councils, they can find that.
That's on that website as well. And there's EggSafe gets no information other than a bill from the councillor. So it's completely, it's a fabulous resource, and I'm just really, really thrilled.
Anyone looking to learn more about mental health and agriculture in general, or the Do More Agriculture Foundation, you can head to our website, which is domore.ag. If you're looking to connect and sign up to the peer-to-peer support platform Ag Talk, it is domore.ag/Ag Talk. We've got on our website a full list of resources. We have mental wellness tips, and if you're looking to support mental health and agriculture, you can also donate. Thank you for everyone that tuned into our live session today for Talk It Out. Again, our topic for today, for this month, was emotional shock. All of the videos are housed on our YouTube channel for further